It's premature. It's somewhat justified based on the talent of this team. It's based on the roster, but Super Bowl champions are not put together in the preseason and in the training camp. I mean, they're not defined by that. They're defined by the war of attrition, a long 17-game season, how they hit the playoffs.
Dallas Goedert, man, I'm expecting a huge year from the guy. I really am. I'm expecting a huge year, man. All right. Speaking of a huge year, I cannot wait to talk to Merrill Reese here. If there was a Super Bowl trophy that was given out for the preseason, boy, I'll tell you something, man. I don't think there's a team in the league. And by the way, it's just not local people. It's now people around the country really hyping up this Philadelphia Eagle team. So far with what you've seen in camp, I mean, Merrill, is it justified?
It's premature. It's somewhat justified based on the talent of this team. It's based on the roster, but Super Bowl champions are not put together in the preseason and in the training camp. I mean, they're not defined by that. They're defined by the war of attrition, a long 17-game season, how they hit the playoffs, who's hurt when they play certain teams. There is so much that goes into it, Dan, as you know, and there was nobody saying these things about the Eagles prior to the 2017 season, and you know what happened then. So it's the enthusiasm is certainly justified, but I stay away from using those two words, the S and the B, until we get a lot deeper into the season. There was a time in 2017, and Carson Wentz was still healthy at that time, and at that point, looking like the MVP of the league, where we were starting to say, this team could go the distance. But it was with fingers crossed, and then, of course, when Carson Wentz went down at the Rams, we said, well, there goes that. And so you never really know. But I think enthusiasm about this team is justified because they are talented and deep in a lot of areas.
Merrill, can you take me back to that season? Was it prior to the Rams game when he got hurt, where you guys were all doing this, you and Mike Quick in the booth going like this? Hey, man, this thing's building up some steam here. And with the way that the NFC is playing out, they could be in the conversation at the end of the year. I mean, and I understand he gets hurt in that Rams game, but prior to that, was it week 10, 11 that you guys had seen a sample size enough that where you went, this team's legit here?
You know what, Dan? It was before that. I mean, it was an amazing thing the way this team came down that stretch. It was absolutely amazing. I will never forget the way they played that year. It was, if I may just put on my glasses for a moment here and look back at my media guide and go through that 2017 season. They started out with a win at Washington, then a loss, and after that they won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 straight games.
Wow!
Before they lost another game, 9 straight games. So somewhere along that line, maybe after they won 5 or 6 in a row, we were starting to think, you know what, this team's got a shot.
What have you seen so far being around the team this year in 2022 that's drastically different from the 2021 team?
Well, there's more talent, that's for sure. Number one, I think that Jalen Hurts is prepared to take a big step forward. This is his second year as a starter, going into the season as the starter, and it's also the second time that he has played with the same offensive coordinator and coaches and system going all the way back to high school. So he's in the right frame of mind. He's growing day by day. The arm has always been there. The athletic ability has always been there. So I think we're going to see a more seasoned Jalen Hurts. Now, I tweeted something that that got a rise out of some people the other day, and you always point out that it's my 102nd consecutive year doing the games or whatever it is. But in my tenure, this is the most talented group of wide receivers the Eagles have ever had.
Wow.
Isn't that
is quite a statement?
It is. It is. Now, I said that on our pregame show, and the host, Glenn Macnow, on our pregame show, we have a talk back, said to me, Merrill, you got to go back to 1982. They had your partner, Mike Quick, and they had the great Harold Carmichael. And they did. But you know what? Mike Quick was a rookie, and he had 10 catches that year. And Harold Carmichael was in his last full year as an Eagle, and he was no longer in his prime. If you look at this group of wide receivers, if you look at Devonta Smith, if you look at A.J. Brown, Quez Watkins in the slot he can just blow the tires off the car. He is so fast. And then they picked up Zach Pascal, who I didn't think much about. But Nick saw him in Indianapolis, and Nick Sirianni said, I want him. And he is a lock to be the number 4. So you have guys fighting for a roster spot. Who's going to be number 5? And could they keep 6 if they keep Britton Covey, who I think has great return ability? But Jalen Reagor, a number 1 draft choice, who has been a bit of a disappointment, is still in a fight to make the roster. Greg Ward, who's been a terrific receiver. He's done everything they've ever asked him to do, but he has had a toe injury and has not seen any action in the preseason. These are guys who have really they're fighting for roster spots. And then this is no secret. I'm not giving there are no secrets in the NFL. The scouts, the pro personnel people, they know who's on every roster, and they get videos of all the games. But I will tell you, one of the most impressive guys all summer has been Deion Kane.
He has.
He has been unbelievable. Kid out of Clemson. He's been terrific. And then nobody said much until last week when he hauled in a 55-yard touchdown pass. Devin Allen, who played at Oregon in 2016, hasn't played football in 6 years, has some Olympic gold medals, and runs like a deer. Or flies like a jet, whatever it is. But he hauled one in for 55 yards, and the nearest defensive backs were 10 yards behind him. How's he going to make this team?
He's probably going to end up, because special teams, and I'll get to that in a minute, he'd be a good special teams guy that I'd like to try out back there. But you're right about Kane. I watch this kid Kane. He jumps for the ball. He goes after it. He's athletic. I mean, they're going to have hard decisions to make at that wide receiver position, to say the least here. I want to slide you over.
Mike Quick, by the way, on one of those catches last week, invented a term. He said he just mossed the defensive back.
I said,
the derivation of that, Randy Moss? He said, absolutely. He really mossed him.
Yeah, no, I mean, he gets up and goes after that ball, man. Yeah. I'm a fan of him, and I'd love to see him make that team. I'm going to throw something at you here, Merrill. And I said this yesterday, and I went on and on about it. I watched that second group of offensive linemen that Jeff Stoutland coached, and I couldn't tell the difference between the first group and the second group. Dante Scarnecchia, Alex Gibb, Hudson Hawk, Jeff Stoutland, I put him in that conversation.
Yep.
He is maybe the most important coach, position-wise, in that building. He's the best offensive line coach in the NFL. Those guys were knocking people off the ball. When you have 31 plays in 2 drives, you own the clock, 17-play drives, 14-play drives. I mean, Merrill, they're going to have a very difficult decision on what to do with some of them O-linemen, because that whole entire second group with Jack Driscoll and those guys and Andre Dillard, they could start in New York for the Giants, all 5 of those guys.
Well, I was going to ask you this question. I mean, you asked me the questions. I was going to ask you, because you know the league as a whole more than I do. I mean, I'd have a tough time naming the 5 starting offensive linemen for the Los Angeles Chargers, say, but the league right now. I concentrate on this football team and the team they just played and the team they're playing next week. I do it week by week, but it just seems to me there are probably 6 or 7 teams whose starting offensive line units aren't as good as the Eagles' second unit offensive line.
Agreed. Merrill, I said this yesterday. I go, if you don't make the Philadelphia Eagles starting 5 in the offensive line, there's no shame in that, because you would make, I would say, 75% of the league around anywhere. I mean, look at the Buccaneers. They're in tatters right now in the O-line. The Jets are terrible. The Bears are atrocious. That's why I say this about Andre Dillard. Merrill, how he has 2 of the best safety belts going. If something, God forbid, happens to Lane Johnson or Jordan Mailata, you have a frontline first-round guy in Andre Dillard that you can just plug in there as a starter. God forbid Jalen gets nicked up like he did a little. You got Gardner Minshew that you can plug in. Right now, you're not going to have a gigantic drop-off right there. He's not going to carry your football team across the finish line, and I'm not suggesting in any way he's as good as Jalen, but he can hold the fort down until – boy, I'll tell you, the depth level on this team, I only see the Bills' better depth. And when it comes to that O-line, I've never seen anything like it, Merrill. I've never seen anything like it.
You're right, Dan. And here's the funny thing. Once upon a time, the Eagles drafted a defensive end in the first round out of Michigan. And Eagles Nation went wild because they traded up to get him, and everybody wanted the Eagles to pick Earl Thomas because they felt they needed a safety. And Earl Thomas went on to have a great career.
Great career.
Meanwhile, the guy they drafted very quickly was getting the B word. Oh, he's a bust. And then he got injured, and he didn't show anything for several years. But we know now that Brandon Graham has turned out to be somebody who will one day be in the Eagles Hall of Fame. He's one of their most popular and productive players of all time. So the same could be said of Andre Dillard. When he joined this team, he really, frankly, was not very impressive early.
No.
And then one time he had to go over and play right tackle, and it was a disaster. They took him out after halftime. Well, he came back this year, and we were calling him a bust. And he came back this year. I don't know where. I know this. He spent a lot of time in the weight room, but he came back a different football player, and you see him every day winning the one-on-ones. I mean, he's more than just competent. He's more than just a decent backup. He has made himself, along with the help, of course, of Stout, he's made himself, and they've made him, a starting caliber offensive lineman who can start, because you have Jordan Mailata, who's going to be in the Pro Bowl for the next 12 years.
Absolutely here. Merrill, the big conversation has been about the running back position. Do you think Gainwell and Boston Scott and Miles Sanders, and by the way, I don't know what it is with the Penn State backs as of late. I was talking to Mike Missinelli about it. I go, what do you got, paper mache guys up there at Penn State here now with Barkley and with Miles Sanders? He goes, we've had the great. I go, relax. I get it. He's a good player. But, I mean, he's always hurt, and this. Durability and availability is always part of a process and an evaluation for every NFL player. Do they have enough to improve the offense with this group, again, to help Jalen Hurts in the run game?
Yeah, they're fine. Miles is fine. He's had a little nick here and there, but he's absolutely fine, and he's a great back. Boston Scott is Mr. Electricity. I mean, he is so fast, and he hits the hole. I mean, he's 5'6", but is he powerful, and he can catch. And Kenneth Gainwell out of Memphis, he's a terrific football player. So those three alone, if they carry 3, are fine. It's a strength, not a weakness. And if they have to go 4 deep, the other guy they have on the roster who's been impressive is Jason Hudley. He's a pretty good back, and he's very, very fast.
Let me go over to the safety side on the defense. Is that a concern for you as we get ready going in? Because they've been trying a bunch of guys out back there. They've addressed pretty much every single area of the football team. But do you think what you're seeing, it's good enough again because of the improvement of the linebacker and defensive line play?
Well, I think that's part of it. But Kayvon Wallace has had a very strong preseason. There's an undrafted free agent. Here's a name. I don't know if you've ever heard this. And I say that knowing that you've probably heard every name ever invented. But this kid came out of Middle Tennessee as an undrafted free agent, and his name is Reed Blankenship, and he's very good. He's fit in very well. I'm not anointing him a starter.
I get it.
But I think he makes a roster spot. I think he's very, very good. I think they'll be fine. I really do. Again, there's some mixing and matching that goes on, but the corners are so good right now. I mean, big play Slay, he's great, and James Bradbury. I mean, he's really, really good, and you'll have a tough time finding a better nickel corner than Avonte Maddox.
I want a couple last questions here. I got two questions for you here, or maybe even a statement here. I've got some friends in the Cleveland Brown organization, and I want to tell you what they said about Devonta. They were blown away by his route running, his athleticism, and his shake and bake off the line of scrimmage. That they couldn't believe how much bigger he got from a year ago. That, again, remember when he came from Alabama, I was like, hey man, that guy he's gonna have to have some Happy Meals, okay, to get that weight up. And I think he has. I mean, you should hear them raving about him, Merrill. I mean, expecting a big season out of him, no?
Oh yeah. Now I don't know how big a season any one player is going to have, because you have three out there and there's only one football. But Jalen Hurts is going to drop back and have his choice of Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and the guy you were talking about when we went on the air, Dallas Goedert. You're talking about some targets. And then I threw in Quez Watkins, who is generally in the slot, and he is a flat-out burner.
Last question here, and I saved it for the end. Are you in the camp that Jalen Hurts has won this job for the next 5 years?
Yes. Now, let me just go back. Do I believe he will win this job for the past 5 years? Yes, but he's got to play well this year. He's got to continue his improvement. I think he's terrific. I think he is going to step up, and I think he's going to be everything they want in a starting quarterback. I think he's got it all. I think he's got an underrated arm. I think he's got a great capacity to lead. He's a tremendous athlete. His teammates love him. So do I believe that he will win this job going forward? I do. I think he's the quarterback for the future. He's the quarterback of the future. Most people will say, even those who are not down on Jalen Hurts, he's got to really take several big steps this year. He's got to prove this, and this. Well, I'll go as far as to say I think he will answer those calls. I think he will check all those boxes, and I believe he will be the guy.
You just to expand it a little bit, though, you do believe that decision then with the owner and the GM has not been decided yet?
Well, I think they like him. I think they're optimistic, but I think they want to see what season number 2 as a starter season.
The reason I say that, Merrill, is because when I look at Josh Allen in Buffalo, there's no debating he's the guy for the next 10 years.
Yeah, but how about after the first year?
No. I understand. I get it. You're right. This is going into year 2 as a starter. I get
it. What I'm saying is, at this point, Jalen Hurts hasn't achieved what what Josh Allen did last year. I mean, last year he was one of the best quarterbacks in football. So I think that this year Jalen Hurts has got to show what he has. I don't think anything at this point is set in stone, but I think that if you ask Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman the same question you asked me, do you believe that he can step forward and be a franchise quarterback? I think they will both say yes. But is it a lock? Nothing is a lock when he's just going into his second year as a starter.
And nothing's a lock in the NFL. Hey, did you go on the road Did you go to Cleveland for the game?
Not not really. We did that remotely. And
are you going to be traveling this year?
yes, I am going to be traveling.
Oh, that's fantastic. You got to be so excited. Wait a minute. Except for DC, Orlando, for Maryland.
Yeah, except for DC. I was thinking of doing that remotely, but then I said, no. Once the season starts, wherever they are, we are, no doubt about it. I will tell you that we'll be doing the Miami game remotely too.
Okay.
Have you ever been to Hard Rock Stadium?
I have.
Do you realize that the radio conditions are worse than they are in Washington?
Yes.
It's a glass enclosed booth, which I hate anyhow. You're glassed in. It's in a corner of the end zone, and you can't see a third of the field. It is a mess. It's
okay. I'm going to ask you something.
Why should I go all the way to Miami to watch the game off a monitor?
And Merrill, I'm going to ask. Okay, I've got to do this then. You see, I refuse to go to that building because I played at the Orange Bowl.
That's right.
But I was at Miami plays at this shitty place, the Hard Rock, and I hate the place. I totally do. Come on, Merrill. Lincoln Financial or the Vet? Where would you rather call a game?
Of which of those two stadiums?
Between the Vet and Lincoln Financial. If you had to call one game, you had those two places to pick. What place would you pick?
Lincoln Financial.
Over the Vet? Holy cow.
Wait a minute, Dan. I'm doing a game at the Vet with Mike Quick, and I happened to sit there and look over at Mike, and there was some green liquid coming through the ceiling, landing on his head.
I thought it was a dead cat.
No, that was down below us. I'm just happy the press box didn't come unhinged and end up in the 200 level. I mean, you remember when the stands collapsed and the West Point cadets fell to the ground. You remember that?
Hey, Merrill, when I was on the field, I remember going over to Jerome and going, "Don't you guys cover up second base?"
Well, do you remember the game? We're there to do a preseason game with the Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens, and Brian Billick.
He took his team off the field.
He took them home. We didn't do the game. We all went home. It never came up because there were metal staples that had come out from the seams that were all over the field. He didn't want his players to land on metal staples. You couldn't blame him. So you're asking me, but I'd rather give the
Only
Vet.
Merrill Reese can give us the stories of that. I love Lincoln Financial too.
The other thing to remember is the Vet was a multi-purpose stadium. The Link is a football stadium. There is no such thing as a multi-purpose stadium that is good for all sports. It's not possible. The Link is one of the great stadiums in the United States. It's one of my favorite places, and I say that not just because it's the Eagles, but it's a wonderful stadium. And there are others. I love MetLife Stadium. I love the Giants Stadium. I think that's a great stadium. I will never, ever like or appreciate a dome stadium. I just don't. I think football's an outdoor game, and I love to see them battle the elements and everything else. I love that. I love Lambeau Field for its history, but even though they've added the super boxes and they've modernized it, it's kept its great integrity and its character. So there are a lot of, there are some wonderful stadiums. I can't name them all, and I haven't been in the new stadium in Los Angeles, and I hear that's wonderful. I think Atlanta. I think Mercedes-Benz. I think that's a great stadium because I've been there when they've pulled back the dome, and it's not just a hole in the roof. You're in an outdoor stadium. That's a really good one that comes to mind.
That place in Houston's pretty good too.
Reliant, yeah.
That place that's pretty good. I've been to the new SoFi stadium. That thing is remarkable. The new Cowboy Stadium I've been to. Not my favorite.
Not my favorite.
The one in Minneapolis is pretty cool looking too. That thing up there where the Vikings play.
Don't love it.
No, really?
Don't love it.
Because you're going because of the booth, probably.
Well, we're sitting in a corner of the end zone. You don't expect me to like it. And also, can I tell you one thing? The level where you're up there with the broadcasters is not the same level that that the people are on in the press box.
Huh.
And for about 50 people, there's one men's room.
Oh my God. Hey, did you like RFK?
Did I like RFK?
Yes.
We sat way up at RFK, and we had those little stools that kind of you pulled out like you ate at the lunchroom when you were in second grade. RFK was always a dump. I mean, always a dump. But but I'll tell you this: I like RFK better than I like FedEx.
Hey, Merrill, thank you so much, man. A lot of fun with you, man. I appreciate it. It's going to be a whale of a season. Thank you for taking so much time with me. I appreciate it, my friend.
See you, Dan.
You got it. Merrill Reese, please hit the like button. Thank you so much. Do me a favor. If you guys are in the market now for looking for an attorney, for you to be able to get fair compensation for you and your family, if you've been hurt or injured on the job, there's only one place, and that is Morgan & Morgan. Promise you, with over 800 attorneys and offices in Philadelphia, New York, and in Florida, there's not a bigger attorney firm in the entire country. Call them at 800-512-1600. That's 800-512-1600. Open 24/7, 7 days a week. 800-512-1600. And when you call Morgan & Morgan, do me a favor, tell them Dan Sileo sent you.
Many times when people are injured at a place of business, they don't realize they may have a case. The fact is, injuries should not happen. And most of the time when someone is injured, someone is at fault. Maybe the store manager installed a cheap, slippery floor, or there wasn't proper security. After an injury at a hotel, restaurant, store, or any place of business, it's so important to call us. Time matters, size matters. Morgan & Morgan, for the people.com.